Breaking news, the U.S. Senate hitting Donald Trump Jr. with a subpoena late today. I was just discussing it with Congressman Jeffries. And the demand is that he come back to discuss the Russia probe. The move adds a kind of a bipartisan sheen to Trump's battles with Congress. Today, he is asserting executive privilege over the whole Mueller report, which follows up on his demand that, of course, his former counsel also defy congressional requests for evidence. And then there's the White House's blanket claim that Donald Trump wants to just defy all congressional subpoenas. I want to get into it with someone who knows how Donald Trump fights in business and in the courtroom. Barbara Ress is a former Trump Organization executive. She worked with Trump for over a decade and is also the author of All Alone on the 68th Floor. And Barrett Berger, a former federal prosecutor in both SDNY, where the Michael Cohen case was, and EDNY. Good to have both of you here.
Thanks.
What does it mean to you when you see Donald Trump say, we're fighting all the subpoenas? New Trump or old Trump?
Old Trump, yeah, with a new twist, absolutely.
Old Trump with a new twist?
Yeah, sure, because he's president of the United States now. He's just not just some guy, you know, some developer. Yeah, he refuses to do things. He typically would say no. You know, people ask things that he didn't want to answer, provide information he didn't want to provide. Nothing new.
How does he test out whether he thinks it's working?
That's a good question. I think he always thinks it's working, to be honest with you. I know that sounds crazy, but
we read these stories about him angrily yelling at people, yelling at Jeff Sessions, documenting the report, yelling at other people, so frustrated. In public, he seems to say everything he's sort of a fake DJ Khaled. In public, it's all I do is win. Yes. And in private, he's screaming, I'm effed, my presidency's over, Jeff Sessions, you're terrible. And so the Mueller report, among other things, was simply embarrassing. Did you ever see him in public say, we're going to win this case this or that way, and then in private say, hey, we may have to settle?
No. I never saw him admit to being a loser in private. I saw him scream at people. I saw him blaming people for things that, you know, he thought might have happened that shouldn't have happened, that he did, without a doubt. But I've never seen him admit that he was going to lose something, actually.
Interesting. Barrett, I have questions for you, but any reaction to that first?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, sort of the approach that one would take in the private sector when it comes to civil litigation. So the approach the president may have been used to in his previous life is really different than the approach that is typically taken in interactions between the executive and the legislative branch, which is, you know, not let's fight to the mat and, you know, make a judge come in and make a decision here. There is this sort of constitutionally rooted principle of reasonable accommodation. So it's a very different posture, I think, than the president is probably used to fighting his battles in.
Which
means that the legislative and the executive branches are not expected to take totally unreasonable positions and then have a judge come in and try to make a decision. They are obligated. Courts have found that this is an obligation, that they try to work together and that they try to come to some sort of an accommodation, recognizing the interest that each side has.
So this brings us to why it's great to have both of you here as a DOJ expert and as a Trump expert. I know that's maybe not what you set out to be within your whole life.
Trump whisperer.
Yeah, it's not your only skill set, but it is one of them.
Right.
It seems like Don McGahn was trying and at times failing to change or train Donald Trump out of his worst impulses. Indeed, Don McGahn may ultimately have saved Donald Trump from the self-inflicted massacre that might have ended his presidency at that juncture. And it seems that Mr. Barr is not doing that, that he's actually encouraging Donald Trump to give in to these instincts. What does it tell you that Donald Trump's first ever invocation of executive power, which is, until the courts overrule it, unless they overrule it, is a unitary, unilateral thing, he had to be walked there by Mr. Barr in part of Mr. Barr's fights with Congress. It's almost like Donald Trump didn't know how to hit this lever without Mr. Barr.
Right. I mean, you see in very different postures, right? I mean, he was, I don't want to say cooperative with the Mueller investigation, because he certainly wasn't cooperative as we usually think about it, but he did let executive staff talk to Mueller.
He never hit the privilege. I wouldn't call him cooperative at all, because he did things that other people go to jail for.
We're obstructive,
but
right.
let's narrow it to just the privilege, which is the news, because today is the only day, the first day Trump's ever done this. On the privilege, he never hit that button during the probe.
Correct.
And now today, I'm going to do it, Barbara, I'm going to do it again. Today, Barr says, Mr. President, we got to hit the button for stuff that, as far as I could tell, is not directly related to privilege, some of it. And now they're doing it.
Right. So you just see very different postures that he was in, sort of pre and post Barr. I mean, look, with respect to the executive privilege today, I mean, the way I sort of read it is this is a little bit of a stalling technique. He is trying to sort of buy more time for them to, I think, continue to figure out how they're going to fight the subpoena. I mean, ultimately...
Is there an executive privilege for peripheral third-party information?
I think that it's at least a question that's, I mean, it's not a slam dunk either way, I think is the short answer here. I think that there may be valid issues of privilege. I think the bigger question is, were they waived? So while they can sort of hit this pause button now.
Well, I mean, you're so fair, which is why we have you here. But I'll go further than you. They were waived. They were waived.
They were waived.
They were waived.
I think there are, and look, there are certain categories that there just is no privilege for, right? Like anything that happened on the campaign before he was actually the president, there's no even plausible question of whether that is covered by executive privilege. It's just not. So while there are some that they may have some kind of a plausible argument to put before a court, there's going to be huge swaths that they don't.
You know, I wanted to dial back a little bit on why Trump didn't hit the button before.
Yeah.
I don't think he could have hit the button. How could he have said, we won't cooperate with a legitimate investigation? I don't think he could say that. Now he can say it because he's been, you know, exonerated. The bar exonerated him.
Has he been exonerated?
Well, according to him, he has. According to his followers, he has. According to the people that want to allow him, like the entire Republican Party, to pull off the stuff that he's pulling off, yeah. So he now turns around and he says he's not asking Barr if he should hit the button. He would have hit the button all along. He would have said, no, I'm not giving him that. Don't bother me. It's none of your business. I don't think it's Barr that told him. I think it's just a matter of now he's got McConnell in there saying case closed or whatever the hell he's saying. Well, why not? Why not stop it? No, who's going to challenge him now? Whereas back when everybody was interested, well, what's this guy Mueller doing? No, he couldn't do it then. That's my.
Can I ask you one more question while you're here?
Cool.
How does he get so many people like Rosenstein, like some of the other DOJ officials, Mr. Horowitz in the Inspector General's office, who's not a household name, but who really did what Donald Trump asked for on Twitter in a very unusual ousting of Andrew McCabe, which we covered at the time, Mr. Rosenstein, now Mr. Barr. How does he get so many people who you and I both know would have been the first to talk smack about Donald Trump before he were president? And he knows deep down, because he's an outer borough guy, he at least seems to fear deep down that they don't really respect or like him. How does he get them to do so much for him?
You know, I have to be honest with you. This is maybe a childish answer, but I think that he does one of three things. He is the Pied Piper to many people, and I've seen that happen. I've seen it with my own people. I've seen architects that he sued telling me, I'm voting for him. So some people just buy his BS.
Architects that he sued, I would say you're saying unfairly, or?
Oh, absolutely unfairly.
And they vote for him, and how do they explain it to you?
I mean, well, he's the best. Well, first of all, there's the whole Hillary problem, which people just didn't like her. But no, he's really good for the country, and he bought his crap. I mean, he did sue him, and to him, I think he might have been impressed by the fact that he sued him, even though he was wrong. And by the way, he won a large part of that lawsuit because he got some people to provide information that was questionable. But the other two possibilities are, and this is the childish part, number one, maybe he has something on them. And number two, maybe he's taking care of them in some way or another with a promise of this or a promise of that. I mean, when you look at the people that are in positions that wrote positive articles like the I can't think, tax guy or what, you know, wrote an article, and the next thing you know, he's the head of everything. You know, so there's a little quid pro quo there. But, you know, maybe with a guy like Barr or something, he's really got information. I don't know. Like I said, that sounds like a conspiracy theorist. But on the other hand, I mean, it's just you can't explain the number of people that are going along with this guy. Republicans, yeah, they're just protecting the party. There's no question in my mind about that. But somebody like a Barr, why is he doing it? Why is Rosenstein doing it? I don't know. You know what we call Barbara Rez in Brooklyn? A straight shooter. You were a Brooklyn prosecutor.
I was.
I was born in Brooklyn.
Would she be a credible witness? I think
absolutely.
So. Barbara Rez and Barrett Berger digging into this on a big story. Thank you both. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.